Hello, it's David and another video on Tarot de Marseille with the most recent offerings from Lo Scarabeo. And this is the second attempt at this video because I did it before I went away on holiday and it just failed to save, and I just didn't have the time or the heart to do it all again. But probably a good thing because I did have some extra thoughts while I was away on holiday about aspects of the deck and the book, and I've had a bit more time to get used to it, and I think sometimes it's a good thing to leave these impressions for a bit longer when you're a bit more familiar with it, because initial impressions are often quite different, and you get used to things and have new insights into it, and you find some faults with things. So this is probably going to be a bit more reasonable. Now, I thought about this one a lot, and I actually wrote down a script, which I never do. Whether I follow it is another matter, but I just had a lot of things to say, and I thought I could end up making this video and thinking, oh, I wish I'd mentioned this, and I forgot to say about that, and I should have pointed out something else, which often happens, but does it really matter? Does anybody care? So I'll try and get through this a bit quickly, if I can, but give you enough detail, and more detail than I've seen on other videos about these, because I think it's worth it. I'm actually really impressed with both the book and the deck. And so a little bit of background, really. With Tarot de Marseille, there aren't that many books around. They're increasing in number. It's not like the Rider-Waite-Smith system where there's lots and lots of books, because there's lots and lots of decks, and there's different ways of interpreting things, even though they can be quite narrow in their choices of meanings. I never quite understand that. I have a theory, but I won't say it because I think I might upset the esoterists, and I'm probably more on the historical side. I kind of make an exception for the Thoth deck, which I think is absolutely superb, but that's another matter. So I think there's reasons for that. Also, most of the Tarot de Marseille books were in French, and translation has been quite slow. And also the tradition hasn't really lent itself to books and meanings, because it's a much more open system, and it allows for a bit wider interpretation. It's a bit more neutral, if you like. And also because the minor arcana probably aren't quite as appealing to modern readers today. So there's perhaps less to say. I don't know, but I think this addresses some of these issues. So there's very few books. This, I think, is fairly. I think it's 2017-18. There is a dust cover for it, but I've taken it off. 2018 is the copyright. Now, I think perhaps Lo Scarabeo were quite clever here, because I think they saw that there was a trend towards more Marseille interest. So they got this one out, and I don't think they rushed it, although I do think some of the editing could have been better. The actual translation from Italian is very, very good. Hats off to the translators, they've done a great job. But I think some of the editing could have been better, because there are a few typos. They're not major, but they're enough to think, oh, come, you should be checking that better. I think being married to an editor makes me a bit more aware of these things, because I know it would drive her mad. So that's only a minor quibble. So they issued the book. Let's have a look at the book first, actually. In 2018, and at the time, Lo Scarabeo had just one Tarot de Marseille deck in circulation, and they'd used the Burdell deck from 1751, which is a fantastic deck. It's really lovely, but the restoration, I think they could have done a better job. I think it's a little bit primitive. There's an example. I mean, it's good. It's fine. It's good enough, but it's a bit lacking in finesse. It's a bit crude. Some people might like that, and I can see why. It has a kind of folksy look about it, but it's not really the sort of modern restoration that you see today in other Tarot de Marseille that have been issued in the last 20 years or so. You know, I do think that could have been better. And I think if they ever do a second edition of this, I think they'd be really wise to use this updated version, which is coordinated by the author of the Reading and Understanding the Marseille Tarot book, Anna Maria Morsucci. It's a different collaborator in the book, and I presume Mattia Ottolini was a bit more involved in the actual design of the deck. And they've done a great job on this, and I'll tell you more about that later. Now, if they had this deck images in this book, it would be absolutely perfect. But as it is, we haven't. But it's fine. It's not a major problem. So so why is this book so good? Well, I think a lot of it is down to just really good writing and really great understanding by the author, Anna Maria Morsucci. And her background academically is in the classics, which is a good background for understanding tarot imagery and symbolism for sure. And she was also a teacher. And as an ex-teacher myself, I am quite aware of people that are good at getting across ideas in a clear, concise way that helps people to progress in stages. It doesn't always work with all teachers, but a good teacher can. And she does it absolutely superbly. So hats off to her knowledge of symbolism, and hats off to her didacticism and her skills as a teacher, because it really comes across in here. So, so there was obviously this need for a book. And later on there was a need for a deck, and maybe she thought, well, you know, I've written this book, and I think, you know, we could do better with some of the imagery and the things I'm talking about. And then Lo Scarabeo got their act together and commissioned her to take this further, perhaps for pressure from her. I think she is quite well known in Italy, and she should be. She's very good. So yeah, so a bit more about the size. As you see, it's a nice size. It's quite thin. It's 170 odd pages, I think. I was a bit reluctant to buy another tarot book or read another tarot book because I've jettisoned a few. There's a few I've rejected. There's a few I've borrowed from libraries, and I don't have many books at all. And in terms of Tarot de Marseille, I think the only other book I have, which I do recommend, is The Open Reading by Yoav Ben-Dov. You can get the black and white version, which I have here, which is just, yeah, there's no colour images. Or the colour version, they're exactly the same. And that one's good because he's not a teacher, and he's not as good as Anna Maria in terms of teaching you the basics, but he has some very interesting insights. So he's a lovely man who passed away fairly recently, a lovely man. And his meanings, I think, well, he uses a combination of open reading and meanings. And I think his meanings are the best I have ever seen for Tarot de Marseille, for a beginner to get you started. Really, really good book. So I do recommend that one perhaps later, but I'd recommend this as a first one. And we'll show you why. So the structure of the book is the usual. So we, you know, like your little white book in the deck, it starts off with a history, and because it's a recent book, the history is absolutely correct. It's no wishful thinking, no weird and wild ideas that don't bear up to scrutiny. Absolutely sound on that. And then we've got a bit about the structure, and we get the usual about the major arcana, and just miss this because I'm going to come back to this bit in a while. So it goes through each of the major arcana cards, which gets 2 pages, always 2 pages, I think. And we come later to the minor, a little bit about the numbers around it. It's broken down to suits, and for this it gets 1 page each, which is fine. And then towards the back, you can guess, you get the usual about how to read, guidelines for interpretation, how to proceed, reading for oneself, some sample spreads, and it's not too complicated. They get more complex as you go on. I would never use any of these. I think I just use the 3, to be honest. Sometimes a card for the day or 3. I do a slightly different 3-card reading based on Ben-Dov's recommendation. It's a slight variation. So yeah, that's the usual. Now, she goes on about the 4 suits, and she doesn't labour the bits about the elements and about fire, earth, air, water and all this. Has a more historical view of that. But where it really excels is on numbers. Numbers, mysterious numbers, about the background in Pythagoras and the shapes of numbers and subdivisions. And she eases you into it. It gets gradually more complicated. It doesn't overwhelm you at first. It's structured, it's simple. She tells you just what you need to know and no more. And no more fanciful notions which you get in, well, I won't name names, but there are other tarot books that get bogged down in ridiculous complexity that's absolutely unnecessary. And it's more about them than about actually using the tarot to help you. So really good. It's graded just like a teacher would do. It's graded learning, if you like. So there's the numbers, there's bits on the symbols, on the colours and what they represent, and even a section on the postures and about whether to read reversed or not. Absolutely superb. Really, really clear. Now, in terms of interpretations and meanings, again, it's really good. It's fairly standard. I think Bendorf's is a little bit better. He goes into more detail and brings out a better idea from the symbols, I think. But one thing that somebody else said, and it's true, and I can't think of I can't pick out the examples here, but she does have a refreshingly feminine approach to some of the meanings and the things she sees, which a lot of male authors don't notice in the same way or skim over. And she picks out, she's not trying to ram home a feminist idea of the tarot by any means, but she just sees things from a woman's perspective, which is really interesting and really, really refreshing. And I do think the tarot is very good like that in terms of appealing to men and women, perhaps more so to women for lots of reasons in terms of the symbology and the dynamics of males and females in the tarot. So that's a nice correction, if you like, or not a correction, an awareness of that aspect of tarot. So she'll give you a little bit showing what you can see here, which is nice to see, an interpretation, an or, which is kind of the reversed, or just a different way of seeing it, which doesn't have to be reversed. She has this idea of giving you questions to ask when you look at each card, which is a really good teaching method because that gets you to think. It stimulates your imagination and it helps you to delve deeper into what you're actually looking at. So again, that's a teacher side coming in, which is very good. Then she gives you some keywords. I'm not so good on keywords. I tend to forget keywords. Well, I've memorized them over the years, but I think it's not necessarily the best way to learn, but some people it works. And it shows you the symbols and what those symbols mean, and each one a message of the high priestess, for instance, is do not notice high priestess, not papess. That's the other slight irritation, is that she's used Golden Dawn named attributions, and I think that's a translation thing, which Lo Scarabeo do tend to do that too often. I don't know why. Just stick to the French and the original if you're doing Tarot de Marseille. I don't understand that. But anyway, it's a minor issue. So a message. Do not be in a hurry. Learn the art of patience and wisdom. So she has this for each one. So that may appeal more if that's your learning style. It could be that you like keywords because you can't memorize everything else. It might be that you take a more intuitive look and you just look at the pictures and what it means to you, which is probably the best way to do it. But then you do have a bit more difficulty with the minor arcana in Tarot de Marseille because it's so much more abstract. It's numbers of things, numbers of swords, numbers of coins, numbers of batons, or whatever. So how do you make a meaning from that? Well, this is where she is particularly good in referring to the numerology. And that really clicks with me. Now, that may be just me, maybe just the way my brain works, but I have always seen meaning in numbers and arrangements of numbers and arrangements of dice, for instance. So, 1 is a singularity, 2 is a duality, next to each other. They interact with each other. 3 is something that breaks away from that duality. 4 is stability, it's a square. And that to me is just absolutely natural. That clicks. When I think of the tarot in terms of numbers, it makes sense, certainly in the minor arcana. It might not for some people, especially for people that might have a bit of a problem with mathematics. But it's not really mathematics. It's just one aspect of maths, which is numbers, and it's really 1 to 10. But she makes a really clear exposition of this. Even something like 8. It's quite a difficult one to think of, although you could think it was 4 and 4, which actually she says 4 and 4, and the geometry and how it connects to the various tarot cards in the major and minor. So absolutely brilliant. I loved that, and it made such a lot of sense. On the section on reading, again, I think, without going into all the decks and so on, the spreads and meditation, I think one of the things that I really like about it is she's very keen to mention, as she does in the white book in the deck, that anybody can read tarot. It's not some magical gift. It's not some blessing from on high or the spirits or whatever. Some people might want to think that, and I think it's quite a good way of excluding people because it seems like you're special or it's a special skill. It's not. We can all look at something and get meaning from it. It's our meaning from it, and it's based partly on our history and our experience of symbols and so on. But we can all do that as long as we have an open-minded attitude to the tarot. We may need some help with things where we can't make that connection, and that's where it is useful to fall back on numerology or the history or keywords. You can use a combination of that, and she's really good about that. She's not saying this is the right way to do it because the tarot is linked to whatever, astrology, hidden symbolism, a secret meaning, an original tarot version, and all these things which are purely speculative. So that's really good. Right, so that's that. Really good book. I think it's about £15, something like that, which I think is the correct price. The paper's good quality as well. It's nice glossy paper and the images are great. Really super introduction book. I've got some light coming. I've moved the camera actually to the kitchen because it's lighter at this time, but now the trouble is I've got a shadow. But I'll carry on. Hopefully it's okay. It's always difficult. It's one of the few days where all the family are out and nobody's going to bother me or interrupt me for a while, and the weather is good, which this summer, it's been terrible really weather-wise, so it's quite a relief. Right, I'm going to just stop the video. I'm going to move my camera a bit and I'll restart for the deck. So you shouldn't see that on YouTube if I get the hang of editing properly. Who knows? Right, well, let's go with the second part of this, which is looking at the decks. I've just done this video a few minutes ago, and it didn't save again. I feel like I'm fated to fail on this this deck presentation. So I'm trying to remember what I said before. So this is the deck we're looking at from Lo Scarabeo. Again, it's Anna Maria Morsucci, and my feeling, I'll just move these to one side. My feeling is that she bent the ear of Lo Scarabeo and said, look, we've written this book, the deck we used was all we had, and it, we can do better than this. And Lo Scarabeo listened to her, which is amazing, because they've produced a cracking deck. It's a mass market deck, so the price is good. It's Lo Scarabeo. Expects it to be good. It's available everywhere. It's available in a mini version. It's available in a larger version, a professional, so-called professional version. The cards are twice the size of this. It'd be great in a classroom situation for teaching the tarot, and you would use this deck for teaching, believe me. And I'll show you why. First of all, it's this little white book. Now, I'm not a collector of tarot decks, not by any means. I enjoy looking at other people's videos, and it's great because I watch them and think that's beautiful, but I don't need it. I wouldn't use it. I'm going to save my money. But, you know, I have a few, and the little white books vary from dreadful to meh. But this one's an exception. This one's like, they thought about this. They made a book which is suitable for a Tarot de Marseille deck, and it's written by a teacher who really knows what she's talking about. So it's kind of standard in that it's got your history, got your different languages, it's got the history. They've got a fantastic bit about the universality of the deck. Let me just read this. I tried this before and I hope this takes. It says, minor arcana from Ace 10 are similar to ordinary playing cards. They have no illustrations relating to the meaning of the card, but only simple figures arranged in precise geometric shapes. However, it is precisely this neutrality of expression in the Marseille Tarot that allows them to transcend trends, cultural movements, and fleeting mannerisms, and to unfold before us like a book with universal images. The fact that the Marseille deck does not follow any aesthetic standards means that it is unbound by any cultural and social expectations. That's just brilliant. You couldn't put it better. So a bit about the major and minor, and about the geometry and the numbers and evens and odds and male and female, and the meaning of the numbers, which is really helpful. I've never seen that anywhere else. That's great. A bit about the colours, which is open to interpretation because the colours chosen may or may not be deliberate in some instance. Some is to do with the technology available, the printing technology or whatever they chose, or in the case of some modern cards, at the creator's whim. This is just keywords for the major arcana, which is a bit limited, but it's a good starting point. Same with the minor and the court cards. How to actually read, and it says you don't need any special preparation or esoteric knowledge to read the Marseille Tarot. Just let yourself be guided by the pictures on the major arcana and the structure of the card on the minor arcana, taking account of the meaning of the number, the suit, and the layout of the elements in their shape. The rest really is just intuition. That's perfect. That's absolutely right. How to ask questions properly and how to use 3-card readings. That's all she gives. That is all you need. You can go further if you wish later. That's all you need. You can freeze that to have a look at what she says there. And that's just a brilliant starting point. You could not wish for a better little white book. If you only ever had that book for years with this deck, you'd be on your way. You'd be absolutely fine. If you want to find out more, you could, you know, start getting other books. Right. So let's have a look at the actual deck. Now, it's a restoration, so they've cleaned everything up. It's probably been done on a computer at very high resolutions. The lines are really crisp and clear. That could be a criticism for some people who might find it a bit too clean. And, you know, its neutrality won't appeal to everybody, but it's a great learning, teaching deck. A great first deck, I think. So of the modern restorations we had started off with this one, the Marteau, which has quite a limited colour palette because of a change in printing technology, which limited things. He also has a bit of a spin on some cards. We've got, I haven't got a Jodorowsky because I kind of like it. The faces are quite good. He does do some weird things. He adds some strange symbols which I don't necessarily agree with, which weren't in the originals, because he's got his own ideas, so he's putting his own spin on things. This is a common complaint I have. One of his pupils was Yoav Ben-Dov, who did the CBD tarot, which I think is a bit purer. I do sometimes think with that, why did you not go for the full restoration? Because he keeps a lot of the very weird mistakes, in inverted commas, in the Marseille Tarot. He's left those in rather than correct them. But at the same time, it's modern looking, and you think, well, that maybe that was an opportunity to put that right without affecting anything too drastically. So it's a bit of a halfway house, a bit of an odd one. Also, I'm not that keen on his faces, which tend to be a bit too happy and ecstatic looking. Ecstatic, I'm not sure that's the right word, but all a bit similar. I don't think the skill went into the facial expressions too much, whereas Chris Adar's deck, which came out before the CBD, I think, although this is a more recent print. I mean, this is a lovely deck. I love the colouring on this one. And he was very keen to get the faces not right, but good expressions. And I think he succeeded there. Unfortunately, Chris Adar also has his own ideas and occasionally inserts things which I really can't see, like a flight of stairs on the court card, which I think he just wanted to put that in. I don't get it anyway. So things like that are a little bit irritating. And there's the Millennium deck, which has this idea of sacred geometry, which I'm not convinced with that either. Again, I think it's somebody that's got his own ideas and wants the tarot to fit his ideas. And I don't think the tarot fits anything perfectly anyway. It's not like that. Its beauty and appeal is in its imperfections. And there are some, I think they're kind of deliberate imperfections. It's deliberately, possibly deliberately made not to fit a system exactly. It doesn't fit astrology exactly. It doesn't fit Kabbalah much at all, in my opinion. I think it does fit numerology a bit more. And there are astrological elements, and there are Christian elements, and there are pagan elements, and there may be some mystic elements, but not a complete system. I digress. The tarot is a bit more than that in a way. But people have ideas and they want it to be what they think it should be, and it isn't necessarily. They're fine to do that and people might like that, but it's not for me. So anyway, this one came out during the pandemic from Italy, which must have been very challenging. It's a Conver deck, type 2 Marseille deck. It's very close to the Pierre Madini deck in many ways in terms of the colour choices and the designs. The faces are quite similar to the Madini, and I think it's one of the successes of this deck is the faces are good. They're not too smiley and happy. That's traditional with the name here and 2 coins. That I can't unsee that now as the entrance to a tomb. I don't know if that's correct. It does look like this in some Conver decks, but not all. That's the Lo Scarabeo trademark there. So I'll go fairly quickly through these. He looks quite serious. A white-faced papesse, which is one tradition. Nice tower card. Nothing weird going on there, as Chris Adar does. Very booby Judgment Girl. They're looking at each other. It's good with the halos. Used a bull, not a horse. Lovely face on Cupid here. Very nice, that one. That's a good lover's card. Nice faces on these figures on the Wheel of Fortune. She looks quite somber. Interesting, this décollé here. I have seen that in another deck actually, so it's not completely fanciful to do that. Nice star card. Colour choices are good there. And as you see, it's shuffled because I do use it. What I tend to find, if I get a new deck, I leave it unshuffled in order to familiarise myself with it. I think it's really important, the order of the cards, when you're learning and getting to grips with the card. Very good Fool. Flesh-coloured tights, but a green bottom. That's usual. And he has got the leaf here on his hand. But yes, and then once I'm familiar with the deck, then I can start shuffling very much inside with tiles there. So as you see, great faces. Court cards are nice on that. It's typical Lo Scarabeo, quite thin cards but strong. Really good to shuffle, really nice to handle. They slide perfectly. Excellent quality to me. Not everybody's a fan of Lo Scarabeo cardstock, but I think they're good. They're good. Not the best, but they're good, especially for the price. But yes, that's it. That to me now, I would stick my neck out and say that this to me is the default Type 2 Restoration Marseille deck. And I think, you know, if you're just starting out learning Tarot de Marseille, or you just want a standard deck with nothing weird going on that you can refer to as the standard, I think this would be it. I would say they've done a great job on this. The only thing that might put some people off is it's almost too clean, too clear, too exact and precise. And is that in the spirit of Marseille? That's up to you. You know, it's whether you prefer the historical decks with some of the faults and the ghosting and the blurred lines, or you might like the modern decks, which are really clear and easy to read. I think there's a place for either, and I personally would probably shift between the different Marseille decks. I don't have that many. I do like the little Spanish tarot with its weird colours and weird funny faces. That's an example of a restoration that's going to has kept a lot of its original charm and faults and quirkiness. Quite like that. And much as this is a devil to shuffle, I do quite like it. I just wish I could use it more. And he's guilty of the vice which annoys me, of putting his own spin on things. But the things he's chosen to do are actually quite good. I can see why he's doing it. It may irritate some people, but they're good, weird choices. The Jodorowskis, I'm not so sure. Chris Adar's, I quite like. So I think that one I would keep. It would probably grow on me. This one, he's okay. You know, it gets a lot of criticism, but it's okay. This one to me now is the default Tarot de Marseille. I will say that. I'll defend that on that hill at the moment. Come back to me in a few months or a couple of years. I might have changed my tune. There might be another one that comes out that's got all these great elements, but it has more charm. I don't know. But it's highly recommended. And with this little white book that's absolutely a brilliant starting point, it gives you just enough information to keep you satisfied without overwhelming you. You couldn't ask for more, really. Right, well, hopefully this one has worked, and that's it. The next video will be quite a while, and it's probably going to be a Jean Noblet deck discussion, which I'm really enjoying. I think it is a fabulous deck, and I'm still trying to work out things with it. I'm familiarising myself with it before I commit to doing a video about it. Okay, that's all for now. See you soon. Bye.